Hello, everyone. I am here with Michele Brookhaus today. She's a homeopath, having done this for 25 years, and from her experience, created the wonderful, most amazing lube on the market right now called YoniBliss. And I'm so excited to talk to you about this lube.
I'm
I
so
use
excited.
So, sir, I've been using it and not knowing even how amazing it truly is, all the work that you've done with it. So I just wanted to know first, before we dive into the lube, how did you come about creating a lube?
Yeah, it is actually kind of a fun story because it was definitely inspired, I've been in practice for a long, long time, and I've worked mostly with women and children over the years. And, I started as a homeopath in my 30s, and now I'm 61.
You look fantastic.
And it was when I hit 50, actually just before 50, so 49, so I was on the cusp. I was in perimenopause myself. I was working with a lot of women in various degrees. Our hormones are incredible as women, and they really color who we are in the world and how we are almost on a day-to-day basis, as I know and I know most women recognize that too. And we often have this idea that we must fight against it. But I think with homeopathy, it's always moving with the body, so finding the things, because the body's wise, as you know too, and will show us symptoms. And those symptoms are the way the body tells us it's out of balance. But so I was definitely having some symptoms myself. I wasn't necessarily, I was on the quote unquote dry end of the spectrum at that point. But I just sort of feel like, we as women don't pay attention enough to our yonis, to our sexuality, and keeping, because it's important. Talking about creating and creatrix, I mean, the womb is where we create from. So if we're not creating babies and now we're transitioning to another way of being in the world, how do we keep that creativity going? So I actually had a dream about it, believe it or not. And I'm not even sure exactly what the dream was, but I woke up with the recipe for the lube, which sounds insane or crazy, depending on who you are, or like, oh, of course you did, of course you woke up with the recipe. And it was one of those compulsion things. I didn't really feel like I had a choice in the matter when I woke up with this formula. I definitely had some dragging my heel moments about making it, because it's a huge endeavor to do something like this. So I actually started in my kitchen. I had the ideas of the ingredients that I was wanting. So I started playing with the recipe in my kitchen, putting the remedies that I thought I would want it in it. I package it up without any preservatives at that point, and it was fresh. And I'd ship it off to my friends or give it to them and say, you have to try this. So, and then was the whole piece of, well, now it's homeopathy, so it's considered a drug in the United States, so it needs proper labeling, and it does actually need some preservatives. So I worked with a manufacturing company to kind of get all of that going, and it was amazing, just the whole learning experience of all of that, and even about speaking about it, because this is like, it's been on the market now for 12 years. It probably took me 3 years, honestly, to actually get it to market because of my own resistance, and then all of the hoops that one needs to jump through in order to get packaging done and figure out a name. And I mean, all of that, as you can imagine. So,
Whew.
so, yeah, so it's been a really wild journey, really fun journey. And like I said, it's been on the market now for 12 years. And even that has been a whole amazing experience, you know, ups and downs as life is.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. I did read somewhere on your website about the dream. I just thought, that's so fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, um, and and so can you tell us about the remedies that are in there that, like, why do you think this lube is
Yeah,
needed? You know, like
yeah,
what,
yeah.
and did you know at the time how important this particular lube
I
would
did.
be? You did.
I had a really good idea that this was very important to get out to women. It was at a time when, I mean, 15 years ago, there wasn't very much lube on the market. You know, there was KY jelly, and I mean, they had really awful lubes on the market. You know, I shouldn't say that, you know,
And tell us why
in
you
my
think they're
opinion.
awful. Yeah, you know, what makes them awful?
Well, I mean, think about it, it felt awful to me, some of those things. And after doing some research around, I mean, there's a lot of lubes. I mean, there was definitely a niche for lubes, but there's a lot of chemicals in most lubes.
Got it.
In fact, there's even detergents in some lubricants.
Oof.
I was shocked to find out, you know, so it's nothing that's very natural. And I know that, you know, a lot of people use coconut oil, and it's an oil, and I think it's not a bad choice as far as oils go, because it does have some antibacterial kinds of things, but certainly not condom friendly either. And so I was after making a lubricant that was water soluble. So worked with, you know, some birth control methods, as well as being able to be absorbed by vaginal tissue, you know, that was good for vaginal tissue, not working against vaginal tissue. So I wanted it to be soothing. So it's in the aloe. So even the base was important for me, you know, so, so there's the remedies, there's the base, it's pH balanced for a yoni, which not all lubricants are. And I don't know that people know that. Most lubricants are more alkaline than acidic, and women's vaginas are more acidic than alkaline. So some lubes will actually set you up for infection and problems. So YoniBliss is a little bit more acidic. And so it's interesting, because what I'm noticing about it is that if you're healthier, then no problem at all. There are some women who feel that little bit of burny sensation with it, but it actually can both help the vaginal tissue get back into alignment and actually give you a clue that there might be something going on that you should pay
That
attention
is
to.
so good to know, because there was a point early on where I did feel a little burny, and I was like, is it me or the lube? Like, I was like, what is going on here? And I should have reached out and asked you, but it eventually, it didn't last very long, and it went away because I kept working on the tissue myself and making it healthier with blood and circulation with the massaging.
Exactly.
So good to know.
It's really good to know, because people will sometimes just abandon it because it burns, and it doesn't always burn, but it's more, it's just, there can be an indication that you're not quite on track. And if you are dry, it could be just micro tears, you know, from if you're having sex when you're dry, and you shouldn't be, you can have little micro tears in vaginal tissue too. So that can sort of bring that sensation on as well. So, so a little bit acidic. It's in aloe base because it makes it, you know, more soothing as well, because aloe does. And then the seaweed is what makes it slippery, you know, so it keeps the slide you know, so there's some
That
slide.
slide is beyond any
Slide.
slide out there. I just want people to know. And I have to tell you that slide, I have an interesting story about the slide because,
Yeah.
you know, my history is that my yoni was so painful, and like knives were, if you touched it,
Oh,
felt like
wow.
knives. It was really
Yeah.
bad. It was just like
Yeah.
10 years of nothing going on inside there.
Yeah.
Completely neglected,
Yeah.
also in menopause, all these,
Yeah.
contributing factors. And I would just touch it and think that I was going to do some yoni massage, and it would be so painful. I'd be like, oh, I'm giving up. Like, this isn't going to ever do anything. But
Right.
then I got motivated and started like every day very gently. And I had read
Yeah.
also that oil base is not good for older tissue. You're not supposed to be
No.
rubbing it.
No.
You have to
Right.
press release, and to use
Yeah.
your lube on the thing, my tissue was like amazing. And then one day, when I'd healed all the pain and, got through
Yeah.
things, and I was working on the G spot, and I had to really work the G spot. My G spot takes a lot of work and waking her up. And one day I was trying at one point, because I started to become more self-lubricating in my journey with the jade egg and this, that, and the other. And so
Yes.
I don't use the lube to begin anymore.
Okay.
I've
Yeah.
graduated to a point where I've got enough, but then I do dry up if I'm working it and nothing's happening. So then I added a little lube, and I'm telling you, it actually turned me on.
Yeah.
The feeling of that glide inside. Oh my God. I was like, whoa, this lube is good. I'm not saying it happens every time, but it has happened more than once. And
Yeah.
I had no idea that the texture itself would add to my pleasure.
Right. Right. It does. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And what I love about the seaweed too is that you get that slide, but you don't get that sticky sensation, because it eventually all just goes into your skin.
Yep.
Which is beautiful. It's really lovely.
It's so clean. It is. Yeah. You feel like you're using the like magic, really. Like this is magic. It feels that clean and pure and healing and good.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. And so that's the base.
Okay.
And then there are 2 homeopathic ingredients that I've added in as well. And these are those little secret ingredients that there is actually no other lubricant on the market that has anything like this in them. And the first one is Nature Muriaticum. And Nature Muriaticum is salt, basically. I think I was telling you that when it first came out, I got this scathing review by somebody about why would you put salt in a lubricant? And you have to know that homeopathy is an energetic medicine. It's not herbalism, so you're not putting the actual salt in, but it's been diluted and diluted until there's, tiny particles. I mean, there's nothing left of the actual substance. It's more energetic. And this remedy has a 6C potency. So it's diluted 1 to 100 times 6. So I'm giving you some technical information about homeopathy.
Wow.
About dilutions, because that's what the X's and the C's behind homeopathy is. It's telling you how much it's diluted.
Okay.
And salt is about, one of the things that salt is about water tissue balance. So if you think about, if you eat too much salt and you retain water in your body, a lot of people have that experience of what salt does to their body. So with a little bit of Nature Muriaticum in there, it actually helps keep those tissues balanced. So I've had women say, I'm just too wet. And I go, well, it would help actually. I mean, I have actually had women say that. It's more often women say I'm too dry.
Yeah.
But I mean, too wet is also a problem.
Is it?
believe it or it can be. It depends on how much too wet it is, you know.
Right.
But it's not necessarily pleasurable if you're too wet either, you know.
Okay.
So it just balances the tissues.
Either way, too
Yeah,
dry, too wet.
it just is a balancing agent in terms of that. But not only that, the other reason I chose it is that traditionally Nature Muriaticum is utilized in homeopathy to take as internally as a pill, you know, the little sugar pills. That's mostly how people take homeopathic remedies, is dissolve them on their tongue. It's a grief remedy. And I just don't know if there is a woman on the planet that doesn't hold some sort of grief, either for themselves or ancestrally in their wombs, their yonis. And I thought, well, why not just, you know, add it to the source?
Brilliant.
So it has this energy, and again, it's a low potency, so it's not like going super deep. So if you really feel like you need some opening up that way, go see a homeopath for more of that. But it has this aspect of letting go a little bit,
which we so need in the yoni if you want to be able to have those deep orgasms.
Exactly. So that's one of the remedies. And then the other remedy is actually a very simple remedy too. And you've probably all used it in tea. It's chamomile. You know, you can see it's a soothing homeopathic remedy. And in homeopathy, it's actually also often, because all of these remedies have many, many uses, but it's often a big remedy for kids and teething. You know, that irritability. So just think about how irritable we can get sometimes too, and we don't know what we want. It's, you know, and kids who are teething and they're irritable and they don't know what they want. I think there's some aspect of that happens for us as women too, especially sexually. It's like, I want it. I don't know. I do, you know, so there can be a bit of a push pull. So this, again, soothing of the nervous system almost, and the vagus nerve sort of starts. I mean, that's one end of the vagus nerve is down in that vaginal area. So let's touch that a little bit, soothe that a little bit, and maybe get us more centered and in our yoni a bit. So
that is, you know, lube on steroids isn't the right word, but I mean, this is lube, a very high frequency lube, basically. I mean, to be dealing with grief and then helping you become wet if you need it, or less wet if you need that, and to calm your nervous system. That's incredible.
And so so use it for yourself, you know, to get, you know, like you've been using it. It's just a beautiful sort of moisturizer, lubricant, all of that. But you can also use it with a partner. So it's an interesting thing, because there is a difference now on the market between lubricants and moisturizers, and this sort of you can use for both.
That's fantastic.
I
mean, all in one and super healing at the same time.
It's definitely got its own energy, you know. It feels like a baby that was born.
Well, tell me how you got to the name.
Oh my gosh, you know, the name was, we actually had really a lot of fun with the name, because I was in I don't even know, it was a call partner. I was in a program with these women. It was like a coaching program, and we'd been put together as call partners for this program, but we called each other. We continued that on for years together. So this was several years, and we'd call once a week together, twice a week. It depended on what we were up to and what was going on. But I just brought it to the group, and we laughed and laughed as we were making up crazy names for the lube. Like, let me see if I can remember, cougar spit and Juicy old cunt. I think those are my two favorite, like, crazy names. But we were just in this very creative, like, brainstorming kind of thing. And at some point, YoniBliss came to the forefront as the name.
I love that journey to YoniBliss. Oh my gosh. That's great. So you had a lot of female
You know,
support energy, group
we need
energy.
that as women,
Yeah.
in all parts of our journey. We can't do it alone.
No.
So so this was definitely part of the journey with that too.
And do you have like when you say you got it in a dream, do you feel like there was some, I don't know, some other spiritual force that was coming through in there, or was there something within your own soul that was feeling? I'm just curious if there's, because I know you've done a lot of work on your own personal healing journey.
I've done a huge, I've definitely been on my own major sexual healing journey way before the Lube came.
Okay.
We were sort of talking about this before. Yeah. So I kind of feel like, when you've been on a particular kind of journey, you're more open to the frequency of more healing in that area. I suspect, now I'm theorizing a little bit, but, I was married to a sex addict, was in my 20s, and we had a terrible, I'm not going to say terrible, because I was really realizing, and I think this is true for all of us, if we could actually come to terms with this idea that we can tell a story in many different ways.
Yeah.
And it's a way that serves us in the moment, the way we tell the story, so I can say, yes, I was married to a sex addict and it was awful, but yes, I was. And it brought me to understand that there's a reason I was attracted to somebody like that. And it brought me into my own sexual healing, because I was unaware of some of the things that were going on in my body. And it started making me ask a lot of questions. And without necessarily revealing all of my story, because it doesn't I don't think it necessarily matters, but we all have abuse, sexual misconduct, memories we don't remember, then we do remember. And, so I've definitely been on that sexual healing journey for, late 20s, late 30s, 20 years before this dream came to me about making more of this, expanding that, expanding that healing with this. And of course, at that point, I was divorced at the time. And I was actually having really great sex at the time too. So it also speaks to this idea that the better it gets, the better it gets kind of thing. And so, so it, in a way, it didn't make sense. It does make sense, but it didn't make sense. Like, why would I be thinking about making a lube when I definitely didn't need one at the time? I was having great sex, with a great partner. But that's when it came. That's when the inspiration came. And I think Elizabeth Gilbert, doesn't she have a book on creation? And she talks about how all of these ideas are in the ethers, and it depends on if we're open to them coming down. So it's almost like, I don't know if I was necessarily personally chosen for this. I think somebody else could have picked up the same idea, but not everybody picks up an idea. And she talks about how stories come that need to be told are out there, and whoever's open to receiving it will receive it and bring forth. Because she said she didn't pick up some ideas and she noticed other authors would tell the same story. And I thought, well, I just happened to be the one that was open to receiving this and had the capacity or capability to bring it forward. There's hundreds and probably thousands of other homeopaths in the world, or And I know there's other great, I mean, I'm not the only great lube out there, but I'm sure there's other really, really good lubes out there right now. Not as many 15 years ago. Now the market is flooded with quite a few more. Maybe this is still the only one with homeopathy in it, even though there's probably a lot. I know there are a lot of much better lubes out there than when I started.
Right. Well, that's good to know. But I just think that it was important that you had been enjoying sex and
Yeah,
obviously had made some major breakthroughs to get there
absolutely.
and felt
Absolutely.
how important it was for you to be enjoying sex. And this
Absolutely.
lube is about healing what's in the way and
Of our
enhancing.
enjoyment,
Exactly.
our creativity, our, yeah, joie de vivre in the world, it's one of the tools. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful. Thank you, because I know taking something to market and maintaining it is,
Oh my
God,
God.
you're a
Yeah.
homeopath. You're not like
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Not my
product
forte,
creator,
I would say.
not your forte, and yet you're still around after 12 years. So something, you're getting some help or you're doing something
Yeah.
right.
I need a lot of help. Yeah.
Well, I would like to help, and I want people to know that that they get a 10% discount if they use the link that I'll be
Perfect.
putting,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
You
That's
know,
great.
and I got it for a 10% discount when I first bought it from you, and I'm so glad I bought it. I didn't use it right away. I
Mhm.
wasn't ready. Like, not everyone's ready, because lube means you're
Mhm.
actually going to be doing some touching. And
Absolutely.
if you're on a sexual healing journey, sometimes you're not ready to touch.
It's true.
And
Yeah.
that's why, my class that I teach, womb power, is about de-armoring without having to touch yourself, but, be using your
Yes,
attention. And
absolutely.
that was my entry into healing.
Mhm.
And but now, if you really want to get into the healing of the tissue itself, you're going to
Yeah.
have to touch yourself. And this lube is the most perfect thing you could possibly have. Like, I feel so lucky. Like, I didn't have to use anything else. I got the best stuff right off the bat. And telling you, mate, I'm sure it's contributed to why things healed so quickly.
Yes,
Like,
yeah,
I
exactly.
couldn't believe how quickly things were healing.
Yeah, I've
For
heard that a lot. I've heard some amazing stories along the way. It's just been really, it's been really gratifying to me to sort of
good.
hear some of the stories, things that I wouldn't have even imagined. And I think that's the other thing when you just actually follow inspiration and guidance and sort
Right.
of do your thing, you don't really know how it's going to touch people or what
Right.
it's going to be for people. And yeah, and I think we also have to, I think this is definitely changing, but there was a stigma about using lube at the beginning, and I just and even men have a lot of trouble with it, and a lot of guys are going, well, my spit's just as good. It's like, I don't think your spit's just as good. And I would, in my experimental phases, I was actually buying different lubes to try. Luckily, I had a willing partner. But, there are men who don't, as far as partners go, it can be hard to sort of introduce that. But I think you're right. We as women have also had a ton of stigma about touching ourselves
Yeah,
or looking at ourselves.
definitely.
And and even when I had first brought it to market, I was whispering about it. I found myself like having this very, soft voice. And I had a friend say to me, Michele, if you're going to get this into the world, you're going to have to stop whispering.
So funny.
And to get way more comfortable about talking about sex, my sexuality, our sexuality as women,
Yeah,
what's helped us
right.
heal in our journeys. And it can be many different things. Yeah,
Well, there's this feeling that you're going to make someone uncomfortable.
it's true. Yeah.
I know that's definitely, and that's why when I teach the class, my womb power class, I name everything, because
Yes.
it's so
Yeah.
tabooed. We don't even name the parts.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how vast and interesting and intricate things
Yeah.
are down there.
Right. Right. No, I love
So,
your classes.
oh, thank
I
you.
gotta get back to them.
Oh, wow. Well, I just, yeah, I, I'd also love to know some stories, actually, if you want to share any other success stories of women that you think it would be helpful for women to know about.
Yeah, I think I can probably sort of, yeah. I mean, I've had people contact me even about um people who were actually trying for children and weren't able to, and the lube helped with that. Part of that was, though, probably pain that was involved in having intercourse.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so I think the lubricant really helped with that
yeah.
so that they could conceive. So I've had stories like that. I've had women tell me that they could actually had the sensation of their vaginal tissue plumping up, in the course of having sex, which of course made sex much more pleasurable if your
Right.
tissues are plumping up. And, the other thing that I haven't necessarily said is that homeopathy generally is not designed that you take it all the time, that you're going to always need it. The purpose of taking a homeopathic remedy is to actually help stimulate your own vital force in your body to working again for itself. And that's true for the lubricant too. So I have instructions where if you are wanting to sort of get those tissues in shape, to maybe use it every day for, apply it every day for 3 weeks or so, and then as needed. But it actually can start to I don't know what I don't want to make claims, but there's just this regeneration kind of
Yes.
process that can happen with it. And if you've been particularly dry, I had a friend who was trying it and she said, you didn't tell me it was going to make me I'd actually start to feel wet again. And without using it every day kind of thing, at some point there was a place in which she felt like her vaginal tissue was closer to being normal again and was feeling wet.
And I thought that wasn't something that the lube was doing for me, but I'm sure it contributed with these other practices.
Absolutely, because practices can do that too,
Yeah.
for sure.
You have
for
to strengthen the muscles, but
There's all sorts of things. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But again, you also then need to be willing to touch yourself in particular ways. Yeah.
You do. And the loop's kind of like this gentle bridge
Yes.
between your finger and your tissue. And it's such a
Absolutely.
soothing,
Yeah.
safe,
Yeah.
healing, nurturing substance. It's like the most perfect it's like for
Yeah.
the yoni. It's so
Yeah.
designed for her.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. It really is. Yeah.
Gosh, what else? I know we had we were talking forever before.
We did. We did.
Is there anything else? I mean, I know that you can help women with homeopathy also to deal with issues like with sexual abuse even, or
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Homeopathy is really amazing at unwinding trauma in the body. So yeah, it can definitely be part of, I mean, I didn't know that's what I was doing. Initially when I was going to my own homeopath in my early, because I found homeopathy, I found homeopathy for myself. I think I told this story too. My first homeopath was in Vancouver, and I would walk by her office every week going to therapy, like talk about unwinding trauma. I was going to her. So I was going to therapy, weekly therapy, walking by this homeopath's office week after week after week. And I finally was curious enough to go to see her for chronic sinus infections, actually, was my initial impulse. But she had a healing, moving the womb to healing weekend retreat that I went to in my late 20s. And that also probably, as we were talking before, was a beginning of sort of cultivating the ground for which YoniBliss could come to fruition in. And that was actually a really amazing time for me. But then it took a couple years later, and then my son was born and he was vaccine damaged, which is what actually prompted me to study homeopathy. But after his birth, I had a really amazing healing remedy for me, that got all sorts of things back into place and back in alignment for me, and continued, I think, my sexual trauma healing journey as well.
Wow.
So, I mean, birth does too. If you think about having kids,
Yes.
that just brings up tons of old stuff, or has the potential to,
And
Yeah.
as I understand, just the medicalization of birth has traumatized the birthing process. And women, I just found out that, and I don't know if you agree with this, that postpartum depression
Yeah.
is actually PTSD reaction to the medicalization of the birthing process.
I totally agree with that.
I was like,
That's
oh my
totally
God.
possible. Absolutely.
Like
Wow.
women can, this is what I've heard, can just free birth at home and trust their own instinct, and everything will be the most healing, almost blissful experience. But
we're taught to not trust our bodies.
yeah, exactly.
We're taught to not trust our bodies.
Yeah. And especially women are taught not to trust that they can do this, and that doctors have to do, and they have to be in these environments that stop the oxytocin and all those natural chemicals that help make birth be pleasurable.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're so stressed out by the lights and the, the outfits and the sterilization and.
Yeah. Well, and even the way the nurses or the doctors talk to you, I can remember when I was giving birth, I was amazed at how primal, that feeling of primalness that just comes into your body when you're giving birth. And at some point I was squatting on the floor. Nice. I mean, it was just instinct, pure instinct. And the nurse was like really mad at me. And she was like, get up onto the bed. You have to get up onto the bed. So they got a little thing for me to hold on so I could squat on the bed. And then she was mad at me because I was screaming. I don't know. I was making too much noise. And she was,
oh my God.
She was like, would
getting
you just
mad at you? Like,
it was like, can you just stop it? She was basically saying, just stop it. And I sort of looked at her and I looked at my husband, and to his credit, he went, you're doing great.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh my God. And we're trained to think that birth is a scary thing with all the movies. It's always portrayed in this terrifying manner,
Yeah.
And when I saw, what was that film, that series, the futuristic one, that's the Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, yes.
Did you see where she gives birth by herself in this abandoned, like she's run away. She's in this and she manages to just give birth on her own. And I was kind of like, oh yeah, right. Like really. And I'm like, no, that's actually, she was so lucky she was on her own and had the least amount of stress that she was finally in to do this. Like that's normal, but I was trained to think it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah. So you're saying that the homeo.
So exactly. Yeah. Go
sorry, we went a little over here because I wanted to get that in.
Yeah, no, it absolutely can help with all sorts of balancing things. Well, it's just a great hormonal balancer in and of itself, but part of that is traumas. Some of that can be because of traumas that we're having those imbalances in our body. So if we can unwind those, I actually did in the last year, it's been actually kind of last couple of years with the whole COVID thing, I was able to study with a couple of other homeopaths and just sort of broaden some different bases or tools in my tool belt. And one of them was studying, they're called mega potencies. So they're super high frequency remedies. And it's all about unwinding trauma in the body, all about. So I've done this trauma program with probably 25 people now, and it's just it's a slightly different way of doing homeopathy in the body, but it's been really beautiful to sort of watch this trauma unwinding at this very high frequency as people kind of come into their bodies. People have just even had a couple of people just drop weight, because as women, we also, and not intentionally, that's not what we are aiming at, because
Right.
homeopathy, I don't like sort of saying, oh yeah, you're going to lose weight with homeopathy, because we don't know. The body will choose. But there's one of the gals was knowing she was holding weight as armor, and it just kind of, she was able to just drop some of it, without even trying. And it's because we do put on armor for protection in whatever way, and we need to feel like we're safe again. We need to sort of allow that to sort of work through energetically in our body so that we can let it go.
Yeah.
So much of it is about letting it go, so that we can feel safe again and free.
That's fascinating to know, like that, homeopathy feels like, I haven't done a lot of it, but you're making me want to.
Yeah.
Might be talking to you about that soon, because, I just feel it's so complementary. It's like another angle in, like,
yeah.
Womb power, we're embodying ourselves to feel safe in the body, but sometimes the traumas, and I do work with someone around trauma, but to work with it in this additional way, whole different way to support the whole process. And I know homeopathy is so unique and magical, and it's just such a beautiful modality.
Yeah. And sometimes it can get over, in homeopathy, we have this thing called obstacle to cure. So, I think it's really beautiful to do the kind of work that you're doing. And, sometimes I will do other kinds of coaching. I do this process healing where we're actually working through, because sometimes our thoughts are our obstacles to cure. Yeah. Sometimes it's a lifestyle that's an obstacle to cure. Sometimes it's something that we know is bad for us and we keep doing it or keep eating it.
Yeah.
That's an obstacle, whatever it is,
Yeah.
But it can, sometimes just approaching things from different angles makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely, because you're stuck. You're kind of stuck, and you just don't want to do that thing that you should be doing, or you're stuck on doing that thing you shouldn't be doing. And,
right.
And you're just like, I don't want to do it any differently.
Yeah.
Is there anything we haven't touched on that you think would be good for?
We've touched on a lot, haven't we?
I know we have. I'm just curious if we've missed anything, if there's anything you would like to say that you haven't said.
I don't think so. Okay. I can't think of anything else at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just want people to know that you're available, obviously, for the YoniBliss Lube as well as homeopathy.
Exactly.
And, we work with women and children primarily, and you have 25 years of experience, and you've healed your stuff, which is so inspiring.
Layers and layers. Yeah. So shall we tell them where?
Yes, do that. That's what needs to be said. I knew there was something.
YoniBliss.com, YoniBliss.com is where you can get the YoniBliss. There's articles in there. I think I have an article about I think it's better to do it maybe with somebody, but there's a walkthrough if you want to do your own self massage, yoni massage. I think there's a little article in there. Other kinds of articles.
Yes. It's a beautiful also PDF that you've created for women to do.
And then my practice is just my last name. So it's brookhaus.com.
Okay.
I finally have one of those websites up too.
Oh, great.
It had been offline for a while. I'd had one for a long time offline and was developing YoniBliss. And then I'm back up with brookhaus.com too. And that's my homeopathy site. So
Fantastic. Amazing resources. And I'll put all of that on the screen too, both websites, so it's easy for people to access.
Sure.
And thank you so much, Michele.
Yeah,
thank you for what you're doing.
Inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. And
so fun to be here. I love talking about yonis and YoniBliss. So
yay! Me too. Me too. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.